Okay, hello folks. Welcome back to the Two Stewards Show. I'm Mark, and I'm here with the lovely and talented Brent.
Thanks, Mark.
And today we have a special guest. His name's Jayden, and he is what would you call yourself, a missing middle developer?
Yeah, new to the space of missing middle development.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, for sure, man. You got a strong emphasis on energy stuff, right?
Energy conservation. So my background, Mark, is in energy conservation. I've been a partner of an energy firm for the last 15 years with focus on high performance new construction, better building practices, energy conservation, strong reliance on federal and provincial rebates and incentives. So my background for the last 15 years has typically been teaching multifamily buildings how to save energy, helping them implement the energy conservation measures to save the energy, and hopefully get rebates and incentives for doing it.
Okay, so
That's a lot.
yeah, that's what I say. Welcome to the show, because that's okay.
Well,
Jayden's an expert, right? So
Yeah.
obviously, what you just heard comes from an expert, somebody who's done this a lot. Okay, slow down here. So, So first of all, you made the drive all the way down here from Toronto, so appreciate that.
Yes,
Because I've done that commute lots of times, and that's not super
it's a
fun.
Beautiful ride this morning. Yeah, it was a beautiful ride this morning. Nice to get out of the city too right now.
Yeah?
Yeah, Toronto's kind of under construction.
Well, okay,
so-
I was driving down the QEW this morning. I look over at Toronto, and it's like full sun.
Yeah,
And I'm in this
fairness,
cloud, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, I wish I was over there right now. But you made the trek all the way over here.
Toronto was beautiful this morning. I was out walking the dogs at 6:40 in the morning. The sun's breaking. The sky was blue. Driving into Hamilton was a little grayer.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
It's the steel plants.
yeah.
Okay, so we did an episode a while back on five plexes,
Yeah.
rulings and stuff, and I guess the three ways you qualify for CMHC financing. Like number one, it's got to be a fiveplex, but then to get the preferred, I guess, tiers of financing, you either are going to do affordable housing, energy, or make it accessible,
Accessible
right?
housing or energy, yeah. And so, Mark, just to build on that, so CMHC has been around for a long time, and they're a federal insurer of multifamily properties. And typically how it works is they will issue you a COI, or an insurance letter, that you can take to any lender across Canada, and it typically gives you favorable rates and favorable terms on a loan. A couple of years ago, I don't have the specific date, I think it was like March 2021. Don't hold me to that. They came out with this new product called the MLI Select.
Who's they?
CMHC.
CMHC. Okay, so yeah, just so people are aware, like that's the lender or the insurance on the lender, right? Yeah.
So
Okay.
they're not an actual lender, which took me a while to wrap my mind around. So, they're an insurer for multifamily loans or commercial loans. So anyway, Canada, listen, this is a bit of a
So way to jump right in the deep end for people.
listen, I mean, if you're interested in real estate, or if you've been listening to anything about real estate, you'll know that Canada on a whole has kind of been in like this housing crisis.
Yeah.
Canada's short on housing. There's supply shortage.
I think I heard that somewhere.
Yeah,
right.
It's probably from that guy in the tent.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of dad jokes on this podcast.
So the feds decided, they're like, look, what is it that we're trying to achieve here? What do we want? What are our social outcomes? So they said, let's make it a rewarding venture for anybody that wants to build accessible housing, affordable housing, or energy efficient housing.
Yeah.
So those are the three outcomes that the feds right now, or CMHC, is trying to push with these incentives.
Mm-hmm. So this would be like the three buckets that are kind of politically popular that a lot of people support, that if you tick those boxes,
if you tick
your
those
development,
boxes, we will reward you with some financial benefits and some financial rewards. I mean, like that's it from a million miles out. That's kind of like the program.
So in your experience, how many people are doing sort of those first two things, the affordability, trying to tick those boxes, affordability or accessibility versus the energy? Because I think when we looked at it, just basic layman, we kind of evaluated it and we're like, it's probably much easier and cheaper to actually meet the requirements for the energy side of things and get your financing that way, as opposed to doing affordable or accessible housing?
Yeah, so great question. I think it really depends on where you're focusing your developments. So like certain parts of Canada, you can meet affordable housing requirements fairly easily. In fact, the affordability benchmark may even be like above what your market rents are. So by default, you're gonna qualify for. Yeah, there's places in on the outskirts of Edmonton that I see it happening a lot of. Province of Saskatchewan seems to have a lot of projects that I've worked on that fit that criteria. And just last week, I was actually talking to somebody that's focused on the accessibility. So they build houses in, I think it was Peterborough, which is here in Ontario. But I think, from an investment standpoint, which is what I think you're getting at right now, is what seems to be the most attractive and what seems to be leading the charge. It's definitely energy. I mean, a lot of investors and developers don't want to be handcuffed to annual reporting requirements. It's kind of, a necessity of those other two buckets, we'll call them, the accessibility and the affordability. And I think a lot of investors just don't want to be handcuffed to offering affordable housing when they could just build a product that meets certain energy criteria and energy efficiency standards, and then you're off to the races.
Yeah, because that's like you do that when you build it, as opposed to having like a 10-year handcuff, for lack of a better word, right? Yeah,
10-year commitment to the federal government, and it, like I said, it requires annual reporting practices. So when you build a building with energy efficiency in mind, you're right. Like you're kind of like setting it and forgetting it, right? You're focused on high efficiency heating and cooling measures, high efficiency domestic hot water, building envelope, lighting.
Those things kind of all sound like really good things to have as an investor in your property, anyways, right? Like when you want energy efficient properties.
Yeah, I think that.
I don't know. Do you?
I think, well, it depends. Like, right, there's two ways to think about it. Like, am I going to be buying an existing building and retrofitting it to be energy efficient, or am I going to build from the ground up a new energy efficient building? And my answer for the latter scenario certainly is that a lot of people are going to be meeting energy efficiency standards just by default, just by virtue of them building in the year 2023 or the year 2024. Right? Like you're going to be more efficient than this benchmark or the baseline that the feds have given us. So I encourage people to try to explore energy efficiency, because you may be building in this high, efficiency standard already, and you may not even know it, right?
Okay. Before we go into more detail on the CMHC stuff with the investment properties, I kind of want to back up and hear a little bit more about your background. Like, how did you get into this energy stuff? Like, you said you had a company, or you were involved in a company doing energy modeling. Can you describe a little bit about your background there? Sure. What actually got you into getting calls for CMHC loan? Like, I think that's a bit beyond our listeners right away. You kind of know what's going on with your background.
I mean, I like my come up story. I don't know if everybody else will, but
let's hear it.
We'll let you know.
Yeah, okay. The year was 2008. We were just kind of in the midst of this recession, if you guys remember 2008. And I had just finished university, and I'm like, oh, well, what the heck am I going to do now?
You're smart. You got a degree. You got a good job.
What did you study, by the way?
I went to Western for business administrative studies. That shows how much I paid attention. Was not the best student, just
academically,
it was kind of like in one ear and in out the other. So needless to say, employers were not lining up at my doorstep being like, Jayden, let's hire you. Anyway, I had reached out to a very good friend of mine who was going to, I don't know where he was actually, University of Waterloo. So really, really smart guy, academic guy. And I said, listen, if you flip on the news, it seems like there's these massive push for government rebates and incentives around the energy sector. I know how to sell. He was an accountant at the time. So I said, listen, I think that there's an opportunity here to sell energy projects in this recession, because when people can't be making money, by more profit, then they certainly can be focused on ways to decrease their operation expenses and become more profitable that way, right?
And you were focusing right on the housing industry specifically at that time? Or?
So to get right into the weeds, I was actually selling LED lighting.
Oh.
And I was selling LED lighting to condominiums, and I was selling LED lighting to industrial facilities, right? So like
and they're replacing it with LEDs because it's way more energy efficient than...
Yeah, I think I remember around that time.
This
I
is
was working
going
at a
way
different
back
business,
for
and
you.
we would get calls pretty regularly from companies saying, "Hey, do you want to upgrade your lighting to LED?" Because like, I think that the different layers of government had different rebates. I know the city of Burlington, for example, was one where they would subsidize that. So
so they had these. To your point, it was like the wild, wild west, and everybody. I remember picking up the call or picking up the phone, and some of the reactions like, "Oh, another lighting guy." we were getting a rap for just hammering the pavement, but I mean, in fairness, we were going around and selling in some situations a 6-figure project to either an asset owner like a multifamily apartment owner. Or an industrial building owner, it would be 6 figures. There would be half of it would be covered by government rebates and incentives, and there'd be like a 6-month payback on it. When you have lights that run 24/7.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my introduction to the energy conservation space. From there, things caught on really, really rapidly. We started expanding. We created a consulting engineering firm. We created a project management firm. They all kind of had 3 different addresses, and before we knew it, we had close to 50 employees, all in the GTA, and we were expanding across Canada. So that was kind of my introduction to like being an entrepreneur and the energy space on a whole. It taught me how to identify an opportunity when it came to energy conservation, and it taught me how to navigate very convoluted and complicated federal, provincial, and municipal rebate programs. And just like I say, that latter part.
When you say complicated federal plans, I think we know what we're talking about.
Well, are there any other kind?
Yeah, they're only complicated.
Well, I mean, I used to say to people all the time, half of our business became rebate consulting, because people are like, I know that there's rebates out there, but I don't have the patience or like the intelligence or the whatever to do it. So half of our business became like rebate consulting.
So that's almost like just a business in itself, just navigating all the jargon and
huge business of itself. I dare you to Google it, because you'll be inundated with ads for the next like 2 months. There's 100 different companies, and like here's the thing about that space. That space doesn't require crazy overhead. You can be a one-man show and just be doing rebate consulting. So anyway. That was my background. So 15 years now I've been in the energy conservation space. And in that 15 years, I've seen a lot of really cool technologies come to light and come to market. I've seen programs end, programs start, programs end, programs as far as like rebates and incentives are concerned.
They got to keep you hopping.
But it taught me 2 things. It taught me one, energy conservation, building sciences, and kind of like efficient ways of building multifamily properties. And 2, and probably more importantly, it taught me how to spot an opportunity for incredible investment of either time or capital and great returns and paybacks on those investments.
You talk about like real estate investments, or are you just talking about like dealing with the government? So what we talk about real estate on our podcast, but we also talk about money, and my favorite punching bag is the bureaucracy. And I don't know, it's an opportunity, right? Like we don't.
You'll take a swing whenever you get an opportunity.
Yeah. No, but just the fact somebody can make a living just dealing with the bureaucracy is like maddening to me, right? Like, and I mean, if you're a regular person, like, you don't know. You need a specialist to help you navigate these. Like, to me, it drives me batty that there is actually money to be made doing such a ridiculous
So the
thing.
fact that Jayden's here is upsetting to you.
I can leave. Okay. We can cut this short.
Yeah. Well, it's like investing in real estate in
That's
general.
the reality. It's needed, right?
Yeah. Well, this is how we make our living, but like really we shouldn't, because there should be.
Anyways,
Our whole economic system should be different, but this is the reality. This is where we live,
Yeah.
and we're providing needed services, and like certainly you are too. especially if when it comes to energy efficiency, I think that's
So
that's
you
a good and noble
you touched
cause.
on those two things, right? So what you had energy consulting, like the energy efficiency space that you've become really well versed in, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have like the ability to identify opportunities. So does that bring you to what you're doing today? Like,
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, like, listen, for the listeners and for the viewers, I think it's important to highlight that I don't come from the real estate space. I didn't have any family members that were real estate investors, developers. I don't have any kind of license to trade real estate. I'm not a mortgage guy. I didn't know what the acronym CMHC meant. I'm going to say like 2 or 3 years ago. Didn't even know what the acronym was. I had earned some stripes in real estate just by buying in 2012. I did nothing. Right?
Yeah.
Like I bought like some old rundown.
is this your primary residence kind of thing? Yeah. Okay.
Primary residence. It's a story that I'm sure you've heard a few times. But unlike most storytellers, I don't say that I had some crystal ball. Like I bought some old rundown semi-detached in the east side of Toronto in what could be considered an undesirable neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you bought it for $1 and then all of a sudden it's worth $4. So anyway, that's kind of my real estate story. I'm certainly not an expert in real estate, but a couple of years ago, this is shortly after COVID, we started kind of seeing policy changes and some quiet discussions about potentially like Toronto having some policy changes or loosening some restrictions on multifamily or converting single family homes to multifamily. Then I started seeing some tax breaks. Then I started seeing some federal rebates and incentives. Then there was mention about, whatever. All these financial opportunities kind of just had me thinking like, holy smokes, this is 2008 again with the government rebates around the energy. And just like nobody had converted their bulbs in their house to LED in 2008, I drive down the streets, nobody has built laneway suites, garden suites. Nobody has converted these old, 100-year-old, dilapidated, single-family homes to beautiful, energy-efficient multiplexes. To say that we're at the start of this wave is an understatement. Like it's not even close to the opportunity that I saw in 2008. So
interesting because like when I think Toronto, I just think, because I'm from Hamilton, right? So I just think like overpriced, wouldn't want to deal in that market. All the opportunities there are probably like have been taken and they're gone because that's where all the sharks
super
swim, right?
expensive,
In Toronto. But like you're saying, you're just sort of cracking the tip of the iceberg. I like the mixed metaphors.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, like for the most part, opportunities have been picked over so often in Toronto.
Everything's been maximized to the nth degree.
You'd think so, right? And I mean, look, the reality of the situation is over the last decade, I'm going to say since 2000, at the very least 2015 or 16 onwards, people have had to go to the Hamiltons, to the Windsors, to the Kitchener-Waterloo. I'm specifically talking about Ontario, but we can talk about any major province. You've had to leave your downtown cores to go to secondary markets in order to make money in real estate. Whether that was by, flattening a home and building a nice one again, a custom home, and selling it for a profit, so like transacting on real estate, or BRRRRs, right? Like the buy, renovate, refinance, rent, repeat. Like you have to go to secondary markets because the capital cost of acquiring in Toronto just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right?
And one of the limitations
because
is
you were
like
looking
how
at
many,
like single families or maybe duplexes, right?
yeah,
Sure.
how many
And-
units you could create inside.
And like, look, there's a cost of money, right? So when you're dealing with a city like Toronto and you're staring down the potential of a 12-month development period, that's on the light end, waiting to get like rezoned in a permit. In all honesty, like if you're buying pre-con condos, you're looking at a 4-year development window.
Yeah.
You're parting ways with your money and you're getting a product in 4 years, right? So
Hopefully.
like these markets just outcompeted Toronto. And I mean, like, look at your social media. It was filled with offerings of like your Hamiltons, your Peterboroughs, Ottawa was almost even too big of a city, but it just didn't make sense in the city of Toronto. Why were people paying a premium in Toronto? Well, I mean, like, look, people like AAA Tenants, people like the Bay Street, the financial sectors. I'm not saying these secondary markets don't have that, but Toronto has that
to another level.
Toronto has, like, it's the, excluding Mexico City, it's the third largest city in North America. It charges the second highest rent in North America, only behind New York City. Like, it is your blue chip stock. So that's why you had these big guys with deep wallets saying, well, I don't care if it's cash flow negative. I just want to own in Toronto.
Yeah.
In a sense, all the secondary markets like Hamilton, they only really exist because Toronto's there, right? Like they form
overflow.
and they develop, and there's so many people who live here and then commute into the city, right?
Yeah.
So if you take Toronto out of the mix, all these secondary markets just vanish. I mean, maybe not anymore, but
You're right. It's a powerhouse, and that comes with its pros, and it certainly comes with its cons. And the cons, if I'm going to highlight it from my eyes, or for like a small investor like me, if that's what you want to call me, or anybody that doesn't have tens and tens of, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to just come in and just swoop up assets, we are cash flow sensitive. We cannot afford to have things that are just cash flow negative and bleeding. And unfortunately, the city of Toronto for the last decade or so has been that, right? It's just not been the best place to invest in.
Yeah.
And that was your point. Like, Toronto just hasn't made sense.
So far we're dealing with bloated government bureaucracy, and then we're dealing with long timelines, high cost of land. Like,
what could go wrong?
Yeah.
So what changed?
What changed? Yeah. Like, let's get to the good part.
Yeah. Much like my experience in 2008, what changed was the loosening of certain policies, the incentives or the rebates, if you want to call them that, handed down by both municipal levels, provincial and federal levels, and the allowance for regular people like us to go buy a single family home and almost be build ready in a shortened window. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth and say you can buy a house and start building in 4 months, but in theory, you should be able to. So everything that I have been focused on is this like as of right umbrella.
Yeah.
And you'll hear me use as of right umbrella. And that means that I don't have to go to the city and get something rezoned. I don't have to go to a committee of adjustment. I can buy a single family home, convert it to a 4-unit, 4-plex in the front, try to add a laneway suite or a garden suite in the rear if I'm lucky, and then I all of a sudden have a commercial property. And if done properly, you can almost buy a home and be shovel ready for construction or conversion in a fraction of the time that it used to take.
Yeah.
And like when time is money and when there's such a high cost of money, that's an opportunity. Now, and that exists across the board. We can do that in Hamilton right now.
Yeah.
We can do that in Kitchener-Waterloo. We can do that in Windsor. So the great opportunities across the board.
And what the interesting thing about Toronto is the fact that, like, I'm just thinking out loud here, like obviously your cost of construction would be a little bit more, but very similar. Like a 2x4 is a 2x4. You build a place in Hamilton, your rents are going to be a lot different in Toronto, right?
Yeah.
Like the tenant quality, the tenant, the rents that people are paying.
Yeah,
in Toronto are going to be a lot higher.
And so your listeners are clear. It's not that we're saying like the tenants are better.
Yeah,
it's not like
we're just morally superior.
Yeah.
So you coming down to
it's
our
like Wagyu beef versus Black Angus or something.
We should have some of that beef, man.
I want a Wagyu tenant.
We're certainly not saying that there's like a different class of people or different character of people. What we're saying is that when you talk about AAA tenants, you're talking about people that will pay X amount of dollars a square foot, right? Like it's like the most expensive real estate.
Triple the price.
And whatever, right? Like double the price, triple the price. So the reason why I'm really bullish on Toronto is because, well, heck, I can buy a single family home, I can convert it to a multifamily, and I know that I have that blue chip stock. I know that I'm going to get that AAA tenant. So that's why I'm really bullish on Toronto.
Because you have a big, just a bigger pool of those tenants. We have them in Hamilton, but there's not nearly as many.
Yeah, a bigger pool. There's probably some more supply constraints. Even driving through Hamilton today, like I was just like, wow, like you guys have such an opportunity for for gentle density just in this neighborhood right here.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's,
There's all bungalows here.
Yeah, there's so much land.
oh, there's tons of
Right?
But
There's
it's
so
funny
many
because when we
bungalows.
live here and we go to a place like St. Catharines or Fort Erie, it's like,
Yeah.
what are we talking about? Like you could fit houses in between every single one of these.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a ton of opportunity.
Do you think that's changing though? Like the mentality that people have toward housing? I'm thinking in Toronto, in your neighborhood where you live, you saying it's a lot of bungalows still. I'd imagine the lots are a lot smaller. There's a lot more density. Do you think the sentiment towards, because I don't know if the government came in or the city came in and just changed the policy, but I know the phrase NIMBY, right? Like not in my backyard. A lot of people were saying, you know, I don't want to see more density, and that was becoming a big barrier. But now with this new policy, do you think the sentiment's changed, or people are still kind of up in arms about it, or like,
They don't have a
are they
choice.
embracing it? They don't have a choice, I know, but I'm just wondering how people are taking this, because you're doing projects where you're converting these houses, and what's your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to my experience. So, like, Toronto is mainly comprised of. I mean, you have your pockets of single-family homes, but it's a lot of duplexes. It's a lot of
Like semi-detached.
semis. Sorry, not duplexes. Semis. Yeah, these kind of like compact living style houses of that kind of typology. NIMBYism exists and it's alive and well in Toronto for sure. I think that nobody likes change. Certainly next door neighbors don't like change. There's definitely concerns with shadowing and who's going to be looking into my backyard. Those are some of the issues that we've had as we take single family homes up to 3-story, 4-unit rentals. But at the same time too, you're surprised. It's not, I was surprised. It's not like they're fighting tooth and nail. They have some small concerns. They're usually addressed. We're able to address them.
They're valid concerns.
Like they're valid concerns, and it could be about, their kids or their own property. And really ultimately at the end of the day, people want to make sure that their style of life or their lifestyle, is that for a little twist? Is not altered too much, and ultimately they want to know that their number one investment, their real estate that they bought, is going to be safe or relatively safe.
Do you think the value would go down or be affected by it, or actually like improve?
Oh, it'll certainly be affected by it, but in the positive, right?
Yeah.
Like we generally have been buying, not the ugliest house on the block, not that strategy, but we don't compete against families on our acquisitions, meaning that like ours are a little bit more run down. They're on main corridors. So we have a little less competition in our acquisition strategy. But the point that I'm trying to make is when we buy these properties, sometimes we'll have tenants in there during our development period. Sometimes we won't. But the market rent for the existing product versus what we're charging afterwards is drastically different. So from a neighbor standpoint, you're going to have a completely different style of tenant that's coming in there and paying $4,500 for a unit versus $1,800 for an entire house. And I think ultimately they will be the neighbor, what's the expression? As the water rises, so do the ships.
Yeah.
Right? So they seem to be happy, and I've sat in on these committee of adjustment meetings, and I've sat in and I've listened to the neighbors' issues and complaints, and they're minor complaints, and they're usually.
You don't have any good stories for us, or
they leave happy. Like, listen, I've heard some of the stories where somebody's developing in like a really affluent neighborhood or like tree-lined streets. These people will come out in droves of people and will absolutely
in numbers.
Oh yeah, and it's like their firstborn kids are on the line, right?
Yeah, it's
Sorry, our camera shuts off every now and then.
With the pitchforks, and there's tears and there's screaming. Like, that's not the kind of projects that we're targeting, and luckily.
So you're not building in Rosedale.
Yeah, exactly. We're not building in Rosedale. And and our buildings are beautiful too, right? Like, I mean, like, they look good. They look beautiful on the street. People like them. They're aesthetically pleasing. We're not
so I think we've jumped a little bit, because let's bridge back to, so you were in energy and you still kind of do that, and you've identified these opportunities, and now you're saying we're doing these projects. So like, let's bridge that gap for listeners so that they know kind of where are you at now? What kind of projects are you working on?
Sure. Yeah.
just to paint the picture for people.
And what's we introduced you as missing middle.
Yeah.
Maybe just like elaborate on like what is the missing middle? Because like, you know, when I think about it, my middle is not, my middle's only expanding.
It ain't
But
missing.
we hear about the missing. I mean, it's popular now,
That's
but I think
yeah.
this is something like 5 years ago. You kind of, it sounds like you identified that, and now like everybody's like the missing middle.
Yeah, yeah. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. You know, I'm again, given my limited background and limited experience in real estate, I'm sure that I won't articulate it or hit the nail on the head. But it's defines the housing typology that's in between your 500 unit apartment buildings or condominiums and your single family homes, right? So your duplexes, your triplexes, your fourplexes, your stacked towns, your row houses. You go to Europe, you go to some of the major cities in Europe, and that's missing middle. You look at cities, even like London, for example, towns in Germany, you look at cities where there's a handful of skyscrapers, but everything else is 3 stories as far as the eye can see. Like that's missing middle housing. That is, it's designed to be providing cities that are in desperate need of supply, gentle density, right? So it's you know, like I define it as what I'm doing is converting single family homes to multifamily. Right? Toronto doesn't have a whole lot of green space. It's not like you can buy up like vacant lots of land and create missing middle developments that I'm seeing right now that's happening in like London, Ontario. I'm seeing a lot of cities actually build these like missing middle style subdivisions, developments. In Toronto, I define missing middle as the conversion of single family homes to multifamily.
So they're using existing infrastructure and they're not overloading it in a sense, right? You're not putting like a massive condo right in the middle of, you know, some neighborhood that can't handle that many people.
Right.
But you're kind of spreading it out. You said gentle density. I like the way gentle density. Yeah, like it's dense, so there's more people. We're housing more people, but yeah, it's not going to be overloading or burdensome on.
Yeah, and it's still comfortable living for people too. It's not like sardines.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, you're right. And
sardines are good.
We saw more than ever, especially during the last couple of years, you know, in major cities, that people don't want to be packed in 500 square foot concrete boxes in the sky. They want ground-oriented. Yeah, who would have thought, eh? Well, I mean, but like, you know, go back to 2019. The reason why people paid a premium for those spots is because the amenities that surrounded that unit.
Right.
Because of how little time they stayed in that unit, and they were kind of, you know, attracted to the neighborhood.
Right.
That the unit was situated in. Sure, it makes sense, right? You take all that away, you strip that all away. People all of a sudden have been like, wait a second. I think I want ground oriented. I think I want a little bit more green space. I think I want to be closer to a community with trees, cafes, shops, and like some you know, neat restaurants and like a real communal feel as opposed to the concrete jungle. And that's who it is that I think the missing middle will be competing against. And I think the missing middle will have a very easy time competing against the old way of you know,
it's an attractive
units.
Lifestyle option.
Yeah, I like. Look, I mean, without getting too into the weeds on what we build, but like 1,000 square foot new construction, access to green space on public transit in nice, desirable neighborhoods, high walk scores.
Yeah.
You know, if I have to compete against the downtown core, you know, multifamily, either apartments or condos, I like my chances. Anyway, so that's missing middle, or certainly how I define it. Maybe I should say that's how I define it.
I have another theory, actually, because when you go to Europe, they're all walk-ups, right? There's no elevators, right? You go to France, and we're like, oh, we got this great apartment, and like you got all your luggage. It's like, oh, there's 5 flights of stairs.
Yeah.
So all that exercise, my theory is that it contributes to your middle slimming down. Missing middle. That's, I don't know if that's correct, but that's my theory.
It's actually a really good theory now that I'm thinking about it. That makes a lot of sense.
But it's it's not fun for North Americans because we're all so
just
fat
packed in like sardines. We're all packed in like sardines, eating sardines.
Anyways, okay, that's a little bit off the track.
So that's the missing middle.
Yeah.
And sorry, to your point, you would ask, segue your background in energy to where I am right now. And again, without spinning like some, you know, fairy tale story, this is exactly how it happened. COVID had shut our businesses down. I don't think anybody was immune to that, no matter if you're anywhere in the States or in Canada or any major city in Canada. COVID shut us down. I was sitting there in my house and just being like, what the heck am I going to do to make money, right? Or like, being self-employed and an entrepreneur was a scary time. And I saw an opportunity where I could combine my background and my passion for energy conservation. Essentially, I read something that said, hey, if somebody's going to start building energy efficient multifamilies, here's all the financial benefit. So with very little background and with very little understanding of the program, my business partner and I started going around and buying and acquiring single family homes in what we thought were going to be desirable neighborhoods, either along existing transit lines or future transit lines, with the plan to one day develop them to multifamily. And it's been a, jump and build the parachute on the way down kind of practice. Like,
how's that going?
we haven't landed yet.
Yeah, okay, good.
We haven't landed yet. So I don't know if the parachute's working or if it's just a fall or drop than I thought.
That's a good metaphor. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's been my journey. My journey's just been, okay, let's learn through osmosis. Let's learn the hard way. And, since we started acquiring our properties, we have seen 2 or 3 major policy changes that has just kind of like solidified our vision, which was...
It's like a big tailwind just pushing along. Yeah.
Bill C-23.
Okay.
The waiving of federal tax for purpose-built rentals. And then this MLI Select program.
Which is the funding, so it helps the financing. Yeah, okay.
Which is federal financing.
Yeah.
It's commercial financing insured by the
Backed
feds.
by the federal
Yeah.
government.
Feds,
Yeah, and for I don't know, anybody listening too, first-time home buyers will be familiar with CMHC, right? If you have what's an insured mortgage, you're putting 5% down. It is generally CMHC that's backing that. There's who else is there? Genworth, I think.
Yeah, Canada Guarantee or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but that so they do tons of that. So it's just basically these lenders know that the federal government, who can print money, is going to back them up.
Yeah.
And same with these fiveplexes. So how stringent are the energy requirements? Are we talking like LEED certified buildings or how hard is it to build a fiveplex and make it energy efficient to qualify for this program?
Yeah, so important question. So the program, and again, I just want to preface everything with I'm not a mortgage lender or broker, so maybe some of my terminology won't be 100% on, but the way that the program is designed from an energy standpoint is they want to see that you are 20, 25, or 40% more efficient than a certain baseline.
Right.
Right?
Is that baseline like the National Building Code or something like that? What's the standard?
So for new construction, they like to use the National Building Code, 2015 National Building Code or 2017 NECB code.
Okay.
Which I believe is the National Energy. We're going to have to edit that out until I figure out the acronym.
Don't worry, we're wrong all the time.
Yeah.
Our audience is used to it.
So to make the program work, the federal government decided, okay, we have to have some kind of standard, and people need to be able to, exceed the efficiency by a certain percentage. So they want to see you be more efficient by those benchmarks.
Yeah.
And as a reward, they're going to give you a point system for every time you hit that next level. So there's level 1, level 2, and level 3.
Right. And then what? So like your job, like in the energy consulting role, you're looking at some architect's drawings of a building and saying, hey guys, if you want to take this building, which is say 4 units or whatever, and you want to get the CMHC, or I guess it would have to be 5 units in total on the lot, right? So say you want to qualify for the CMHC energy stuff, what are you just like specifying certain types of insulation, or like are there certain checkpoints that you can hit on, or?
Yeah, so it's part of what I do, or part of what we've been doing now for the last call it 8 months to a year, is half part consulting on what kind of building sciences somebody should be incorporating into their new build, and then the other half is producing an energy modeling report. So one of the requirements that CMHC has is if you want to access this financing, you need to have what's called energy modeling. So energy modeling is the actual name of the service.
Right.
Energy modeling is like a predictive energy consumption over the next 365 days, based on heating and cooling degree days, based on like some certain simulations, depending on where you are in Canada.
Right.
So the energy modeling software is the one service that we offer, but then as a spin-off to that, everyone's like, okay, well, give us some guidance on what kind of heating systems should we use, size them for us. What's the make, model, serial number? What kind of building envelope systems should we use? Windows, domestic hot water, appliances, lighting.
Yeah.
Like a large part of what it is that we do is sitting down with people hopefully in the preliminary stages, like the planning stages, and giving them guidance and consulting as to what they need to do to hit their certain milestones or benchmarks.
So they can take drawings of a building and then get the financing, and like everything in between is not like is figured out for them.
Yeah, and presumably then they can have an idea of like, here's my energy costs over the next 5 years or whatever, right? Provided rates stay at X, then we know what we're going to be spending, which is like, that's pretty useful too. If you got 5 units, I mean, if the tenants are paying for it, great. If you're paying for it, it at least gives you some certainty, right? To know that, because that's in real estate, you've got your fixed costs and then you got your variables. Yeah. And the more variables you can eliminate, the better certainty you have that you're going to be successful. So you're kind of able to provide some certainty in that area as well, right?
Yeah, like we've been asked before to do like an energy audit, which is a little bit different than energy modeling. And an energy audit can we would take your annual hours of operation, the rate that you charge per kilowatt hour, and then we would size whatever piece of equipment we're talking about, whether it's your lighting systems or heating and air conditioning, and we can almost break it out to the dollar.
Really?
Over 365 days, what that piece is going to run you.
Wow.
And that information is important because when we can determine that dollar amount and that kilowatt hour consumption or that cubic meter of natural gas, then we can determine if there's any other available rebates and incentives by lowering it. Because that's usually how utility companies give you incentive or rebate money, is based on the reduction in kilowatt hours or cubic meter of gas or cubic meter of water that you're reducing. But you're right. I mean, like from a building operation standpoint, people want to know how much their systems are costing them to run. And one of the questions that Brent asked is, there's other ways to access this CMHC financing program, right, through affordability and accessibility.
Yep.
But he said, don't most asset owners want to have a high energy efficient building? And the answer is yeah. The answer is yeah. I think it's a more attractive asset to have. I think it, probably means that it trades for a premium when you go to sell it. And I think ultimately it's like, look, you're going to have people that do this program for one of 3 reasons, in my opinion, right? There's the planet, the people, and then the profit, the 3 Ps that always seem to be, under the envelope of energy conservation. The planet's a no-brainer. I mean, I would hope most people want to do what's right for the environment, so it's great to have an asset that does that, a multifamily. The people, we think that our tenants we think we're building a superior product. We think that our tenants are going to be happier as a result of a high efficiency building. Heating and cooling systems are more efficient. Lighting systems are more efficient. It's easier on their bills, so they're happier. Mm-hmm. And then, when you address the first 2 Ps, the profit, the last P, kind of just, it's a byproduct of keeping the first 2 Ps happy.
Right.
The planet and the people are happy. Your profit's going to be happy as well too. So,
interesting.
Yeah. So just on the profit side, that's where I gravitate to. What are the differences in the financing costs? Like, what can you? So, typical investor, you're going to put 20% down, and whatever rate you can get from your lender. What are some of the differences with the CMHC program?
Yeah. So the benefits of the CMHC. That's.
This is a whole topic, Mark.
Yeah.
You open another can of sardines.
That's.
Do sardines come in cans?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they come from the ocean.
Okay.
There's a middle step there.
Freshwater sardines.
The planet.
Lake sardines.
Anyways.
Yeah, you're right. Like, why are we doing all this? Right? Like,
CMHC,
what is the benefit?
Well, because I talk to people and I'm like, I have to convince people that debt's a good thing. And I'm constantly talking to people who are like, so you're telling me that I should have more debt. And I'm like, well, technically, if your dollar devalues, it's beneficial to have debt on a good asset, right?
Yeah.
So here we are talking about how to get more debt through CMHC at better rates, and like, yeah, this is so fun, right? Let's get more debt. But like, people listening to this are probably like, these guys are nuts.
Well, it's funny that we're this far into it and we haven't actually addressed the question. Like, why do people want CMHC?
Yeah.
Like the certificate of insurance from CMHC.
Hit us
Why?
with it.
So if I'm an asset owner, if I'm a multifamily asset owner, obviously cash flow and your financial well-being of that building is determined by a variety of factors. But your financing term is a massive determinant of the financial health of that building. CMHC financing gives you access to lower interest rates, somewhere to the tune of like 1.5% to 2% better than what you can get at any major bank or any major lender. You have higher loan to value allowances. You can go up to 95% loan to value.
95%.
95%, which means that, in theory, an investor or a builder can access all the money that they put down to build it, acquire the land, and the added appreciation. They can take that money out upon the first day of stabilization. Don't quote me on that timeline, but in theory, that's how the program works.
Second day of stabilization.
Day 2.
Third day will guarantee.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have lower debt service requirements as well, which means in order for the bank to approve your loan, you don't need to show this high debt service coverage ratio. So they give you some allowances there.
Is that personal or is that based on the project?
That's based on the project. So
that's another benefit.
Yeah, that's another benefit. So there's recourse and non-recourse loans. These are non-recourse loans, which means although your personal net worth is important to get the loan originally, or initially, I should say, once the building is stabilized and once you have tenants
once the loan's in place,
once the loan's in place, you can come off as a personal guarantee on that loan.
Okay, wow.
So what does this mean? It means, and I'm sorry, you can get a 50-year amortization. Up from a 20.
Well, just slip that in at the end.
Up from a 25 year. So try to note this in the 48-minute mark. The benefits of this program are lower interest rates, 50-year amortization, lower debt service coverage requirements, and up to 95% loan to value. What does this mean? This means that if my building here, is doing, let's say, $10,000 a month in rent, under the MLI Select program, it's going to generate up to twice as much cash flow as just a conventional loan if you don't go through the CMHC. And from an investor, is that not what it's all about? Don't you want your projects to be cash flowing? And
yeah, you can start doing more projects.
You can start doing more.
Well, yeah, because especially if you can take your personal guarantee off, now you can move on to another project, and it's like that project doesn't really exist from a financial, from a debt service standpoint, right? You could have 10 of these, and as long as you're not tied, because that's the big project for what we're more used to is single family home investors. You get above 5, and then it starts to get really dicey, even if you've got great income and everything else, right? The banks are like, oh, I don't know if I like this, right? But in this case, that's incredible.
Okay, a couple things jump in my head. Well, one is, so we all want the CMHC financing, but that comes at a cost, right? Because we're going to have to spend money on the energy efficient stuff. We're going to have to pay Jayden to do his thing and get the loan, whatever. That's one thing. And the other thing is how am I going to buy a property in Toronto? And then I'm assuming we got to convert it to 4 units. So there's going to be lot, 5 units. Yeah. Right. So we got to convert this thing to get the financing in the first place. How is the average person listen to this go, all right, I got a couple $100,000 and the property in Toronto's $1 million plus. Mm-hmm. What are is this even worth talking about, guys?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing?
Yeah, it's
is it too far out of reach for people? How should people digest this information?
Maybe for one person.
Yeah, maybe for one.
But what if you got 2 or 3 persons?
So you bring up a great point and a great opportunity, which is partial ownership or fractional ownership, working with somebody that can bring you on in a partnership capacity so that you can maybe come in with like a $50,000, $100,000 placement and still be able to participate in this missing middle. The one thing, the ugly reality of this program and everything we've talked about, it does take a fair amount of capital.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't really have debt on the land as you go to CMHC and ask for more money for either construction financing or the permanent financing on the back end. Your debt position has to be pretty favorable and attractive, which means even if you're buying something in Hamilton, like you need $700,000 or $800,000 cash in hand. You got to go buy a piece of land with no debt on it. You got to at least get the construction ball rolling. So like, it's a great program. The accessibility to making it work, however, when the rubber hits the pavement's a little bit different. So
Right.
we started exploring the idea of fractional ownership about 2 years ago. And part of our idea and our thinking was, how do we get our neighborhood involved in this neighborhood conversion? So we wanted to be tenant focused in terms of the development, but neighborhood focused in terms of the investment, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we started reaching out to like quite literally our next door neighbors in some situations and saying, hey, do you want to own this with us? These are our plans. This is what it is that we want to build. Do you want to own this with us? And it's not a foreign concept for anybody that understands like a REIT, for example, or fractional ownership, but we're doing it a little bit different because we want to include everybody that wants to be involved and share in the upside, but we're allowing $50,000 minimum investment to come partner up with us.
Wow.
So for a neighbor next door or somebody else down the street who has 50 grand, they're now co-owning a building.
And it's in their neighborhood, so they have they got a real stake in it.
Yeah, it's like pride of ownership. I mean, like honestly, if
I
you
could just picture like, hey, don't park there.
yeah, or going out and cutting the lawn at midnight, getting cutting your lawn. If you talk to like the neighbors in my little community that I live in, everybody would tell you that buying a house 10 years ago was the best investment they ever made, accidentally.
Yeah.
And then they would probably sit there in the same breath and say, oh, I wish I would have bought 10.
Yeah.
Oh, my neighborhood's become so unaffordable now, right? So like the same virtues that made this great investment are the same thing that's priced them out of it. And if you would have asked anybody in my neighborhood, yeah, they would have told you that they would have bought 10 more. And so they see these opportunities kind of getting further and further and further out of reach until we started knocking on the door and saying, invest with us. Do you want to own this with us?
Yeah.
Come own your next door. Don't be jealous or envious at the development that you see going on in the neighborhood. Don't see it as you're being priced out. Come on board with us and own it with us.
That's a really interesting strategy, actually.
Yeah, because
cool.
you have you're building community too, right?
Yeah, we want it to be like built for us, by us, with all the community members. So I started talking to local store owners and shop owners and restaurateurs and chiropractors in the neighborhood and dentists in the neighborhood and saying, hey, look, you know how hot this neighborhood is. Clearly, you work in it.
Yeah.
You service this neighborhood. You see what's going on it. Like a lot of our partners have a thumb right on the pulse, so they know what's going on. So you don't have to sell them on the neighborhood.
Yeah, they're
You don't
committed.
have to sell them on the tenant class and what's going on with the rents. They know it firsthand. What they can't access is either their own independent financing or they don't have $1 million cash to put down on it, right?
Yeah.
So that's our next goal. Our next goal is opening up the missing middle, our all-electric, eco-friendly apartments that we're building for people that just want to get involved at a smaller dollar amount.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, because that's one of the roadblocks that we've talked about, right?
Yeah.
It's just the capital cost.
Yeah.
Somebody might have 100,000 or they might have equity in their home that they're comfortable taking out 100 grand, 50 grand, but 700,000-800,000.
Yeah,
It's a different level, right?
And it's a level of risk too, right? Once you pull $800,000 of your own money out of something, you better know what you're doing with it, right? If you lose that or you don't put it to work right away, right? If you start buying one of these places and it takes you 2 years to get approvals because you don't know what you're doing, you can lose all that money pretty quick.
Yeah, it's the difference between having a cash flowing project or losing a big chunk of that and having to walk away with nothing, right?
Yeah.
Which is why you probably want to work with somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I think the idea of fractional ownership is it allows them to also invest in a passive capacity, right? So like a lot of people have 9-to-5 jobs, which is, you know, the reality.
Yeah.
I have a 9-to-5 job, right? Dealing with tenants and termites and ticks and toilets is not the reality for a lot of people. So what we want to offer people is the opportunity to get into the real estate space, get into the market, right? Like ride the wave, appreciate some of all the benefits that real estate has to offer from an investment class without having to manage all the things that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Right? With a little bit more passive hands off. So like a lot of the benefits with not a lot of the downside.
Yeah.
What do you also take on property management after once it's built?
So right
How do you
now,
source that out?
right now we're going to do it in-house until we hit a certain number of units, and then I think we'll probably hit a bit of a ceiling, and have to outsource it or explore the idea of building out a division that does it, in-house. I don't know if I highlighted this earlier, but every asset that we have decided to develop over the last couple of years is within a bicycle ride of where me and the other partners live. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we're really like locally focused. It gives us a thumb on the pulse. It allows us real insight as to what's going on. So like for the time being, we can manage the properties and do it pretty efficiently and effectively. So.
And there's still, I mean, presumably there's still lots more available properties in that area.
Yeah.
Because of the density, right?
Yeah, there's.
So.
The lot sizes are this big.
Yeah.
Right, they're this big, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And the other cool thing to highlight from a maintenance standpoint is when you're building green and it's brand new, everything should be under warranty. So hopefully things aren't giving us too much headache in the first couple of years. So we like to think that we're building relatively maintenance free.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. Relatively maintenance free properties for the future.
Man, yeah, I'm excited about this. I think it's a really, really interesting opportunity. Maybe it's been said, but I like to call it the sweet spot. Like, it seems like most investors want to be in Toronto, but they've been forced, like you said, out to other secondary markets. They want those tenants. And now, like you've discussed, the options with financing, they want that financing too. And this kind of marries the two in a kind of unique way that's accessible. And there seems to be a lot of opportunities. So I think the next bunch of years, this is going to be a really interesting trend to watch. And it'll be really cool to see how you guys take off and where you go from here. So.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, we're having fun doing it. So I mean, time will tell. We got to get you guys on site. I'll bring you guys to some of the projects. Hopefully, as the weather gets a little warmer. Which is, I've been told to stop jinxing the weather, but like we're on site. Our guys were in t-shirts this week.
Oh.
Our guys were in t-shirts. It was 7 degrees yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, for February 2nd, could you ask for
that's
better weather for construction? So.
I don't like it. Not one bit.
I'm with you. I mean, like it's a little off-putting a little bit, like the fact that it's almost golf weather in February.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just bought a place in ski country in the States, so I'm hoping this trend doesn't continue.
Whereabouts?
It'll be near Ellicottville.
Ellicottville.
Yeah.
It's Vermont.
So, I mean, there's still sno. What's that?
Is that Vermont or upstate?
No,
New York?
Western New York.
Oh, yeah,
It's a
upstate
couple
New
hours
York,
away.
yeah.
So, yeah, we just need it to be like 0 so they can make snow.
Yeah, I know. Well, my dad's got a place in Collingwood that he rents up there too, and he's just like, I don't know if you've seen Collingwood,
It's
Ontario.
just green?
It's just green.
Yeah.
Just green and brown and like a little sliver of white. Like, you know what I mean? And I was talking to him yesterday. I'm like, what does Collingwood look like if this keeps up for the next 10 years? Like, is it not a ski town?
Yeah.
Like, what happens? So,
What's the solution? We make everything energy efficient? Is that going to save
you have to make everything energy efficient. We're combating it.
So if the government is incentivizing this space, then it's a good space to invest in. All right.
I would say so.
Okay. Cool.
Okay,
Anything else we got to touch on, or we wrap this up?
I think we're good. I don't know. Do you have anything burning that we haven't talked about?
I'll have you back on, definitely. I think when you, as the projects progress and as we get some interesting info on the tenants and feedback.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really cool to have you back on.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
We'd love to have you guys on site, and as we wrap up some of these projects and get them tenanted, and I can come back here with like some real concrete numbers, so it's like returns and who got how much of their money back when and what timelines. I think that'll be an interesting case study.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet.
So in the meantime, how do people get a hold of you?
Pretty easy to find online. Jayden Haywood at River Development is the name of my company. My energy company is PL Energy. Send me an email or reach out to Brent. Brent has my contact name. That's the easiest way, eh?
Yeah, no, people
Yeah,
can
just-
reach out to the show and we'll hook them up too.
Yeah.
We'll definitely put all this contact info in the show notes too, so people
Appreciate
can
it.
find you and
Yeah.
stay in touch. So yeah, thanks for
man.
making the trek.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, guys, for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks very much. And for our listeners, until next time.
Steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
And if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We will see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.